Welcome students. Today we will see the second chapter, the importance of the study of industrial sociology. Industrial sociology is the study of the interaction of people within industry. It includes the study of boss-subordinate, interdepartmental and management trade union relationships. Moreover, on a macro sociological scale, it is the study of the impact of industrialization on whole societies. Industrial sociology is concerned with industry as social system. Factors like technical, economic, political affect structure and working of the system. In view of these factors playing great role, study of industrial sociology assumes much importance. In general, there are two types of social sciences. The first one, generalizing science, and the second one, specializing science. The former deals with the entire social area of social life, that is, all areas of social life. The latter deals with the special area with a special life. For instance, sociology is a generalizing science. It studies the human society as a whole. Its principles apply to all aspects of the society, social, economic, political, etc. But political science is a specializing science. It is interested in the structure of authority in society. Its principles apply only to political sphere of social life. Industrial sociology, which is the application of the principles of sociology to industry, is both generalizing social science and a specializing social science. As a generalizing science, it studies roles, statuses, values, motivations, social attitudes of the entire personnel of industry. As a specializing science, it studies these aspects with reference to particular section of the industrial personnel. As a generalizing science, it studies the action which occurs in industry, how different categories of the personnel act towards one another. As a specializing science, it studies how the workers act towards their fellow man. Industrial sociology had its beginning in the research conducted by the Harvard Business School and the Western Electric Company at its Hawthrone plant near Illinois, USA. The research was conducted from 1924 to 1932 and reports were published over a period of approximately 10 years thereafter. The Hawthrone research, known as the Hawthrone Experiments, was undertaken at a time when individualism reigned supreme in industry, in which the ideas of Adam Smith had taken root. The worker was viewed as an economic man selling his individual labor at the best price he could secure, individually and competitively. His objective was stated to be profit, and it was believed that most of his energies were directed towards this objective. It was in this climate that the Hawthrone experiments were conducted, by which the experimenters discovered the supremacy of social and human elements and their influence in industry. The Hawthrone experiments was preceded by two preliminary experiments, the Philadelphia spinning mills experiment and the illumination experiment. The first one, the Philadelphia spinning mills experiment. This experiment was conducted by George Elton Mayo. He was the head of the Department of Industrial Research of Harvard University in Boston. He conducted this experiment in the spinning mill department of textile mill near Philadelphia in 1923 to 24. Here, where about 40 men were working, their working conditions were anything but ideal. Labor turnover was about 20% per annum, while in other departments it was only 5 or 6%. In spite of incentives, productivity remained low, while absenteeism and similar symptoms of poor organizational health were high. The pieces in the department whose job was to tie together the threads that in the process of spinning had broken worked a normal week of 5 days for 10 hours divided into 2 parts, morning and afternoon, with a break of 45 minutes for lunch. Yet, there were irritable, constantly complained of fatigue, neuritis in arms and shoulders, and of the low esteem in which their job was held. Production was so low that the pieces never reached a sufficient level to earn a bonus which had been reasonably provided for them. Research of Harvard University, George Elton Mayo, head of the Department of Industrial Research, was called to improve this situation. He introduced 2 10-minute rest pauses in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. Production went up from 70% to 80% and sometimes rose as high as 82%. This, according to Mayo, was due to the introduction of an appropriate system of rest pauses, but he himself was not quite sure that was the true reason for the increase in production, for he knows that in the other departments of the mills where no rest pauses had been introduced, the matters were normal. Also on the same department in which the rest pauses had been introduced under different conditions, the results were negative. The supervisors of the department who were unfavorable to the experiment since its inception, under the pretext of meeting an urgent order, disallowed the rest pauses. Thereafter, the production in the department fell to a new low of under 70%. Again, the rest pauses were introduced by the supervisor, but on a condition that the workers could have their rest only after the completion of the task set for them. But production began to sink as low as before, down to a 70% level. Second experiment, the illumination experiments. These experiments were undertaken from November 1924 through April 1927 by George A. Pennock, an engineer employed in the Western Electric Company, Chicago, to assess the effect of illumination on employee output. For this purpose, the workers were separated into 2 rooms, the experimental or test room, where changes were to be introduced, and the control room, which was similar to the other in all respects except that in this room illumination was constant. The idea being to find out whether any change in lighting would affect production in the restroom. It was found when lighting in the experimental room improved, production registered an increase. When the light was progressively raised to 24, 26 and 70 foot candles, production went up proportionately. After a while, however, for no apparent reason, output soared in the control room as well when no change at all had been made. In an attempt to find the solution to the puzzle, the process hitherto followed was reversed. The illumination in the restroom was reached from 10 to 3 foot candles, but production, instead of falling, went up slightly. This happened not only in the experimental room but also in the control room, where the illumination remained constant. This was a clear indication of the fact that there was no correlation between lighting and performance. It was then thought the failure of these experiments must have been due to imperfect control over the environmental factors, some of which unnoticed by them must have interfered when the lighting was being changed, upsetting thereby the normal sequence of events. This thought led to another experiment at the Western Electric Company's plant at Hawthrone, which is the popularly known as the Relay Assembly Test Room RATR experiment. Now, we will see the Relay Assembly Test Room experiment. This experiment was conducted by Elton Mayo in collaboration with F.J. Roethlisberger and a big team of researchers including Professor W. L. Warner, G. A. Pennock, M. E. Putnam and H. A. Wright and W. J. Dixon. The experiment was conducted between 1927 and 1932. The purpose of the experiment was to determine more accurately the effects of physical environmental factors on productivity and in particular effects of passes, length of working day and method of payment. For this purpose, a simple task, that of assembling telephone relays made up of approximately 35 small parts fastened together by 4 screws was chosen, a task which was easily amenable to quantification. A small group of 6 girls were selected and placed in a room. Ingenious arrangements were to record the rates of production of the workers and the variations events, including their conversations and other forms of interaction. A special observer was installed in the test room to take note of what was going on and to keep records. The girls too were informed and consulted about the changes that were introduced in the experiment, that is introduction of rest pauses, variation in the length of working day and change in the basis of payment. The climate this created was so free and informal that the workers lost their apprehension of authority. Their behavior was normal, but their morale was very high. An atmosphere of friendliness prevailed throughout the period of the experiment. The results of the experiment were surprising to the experimenters. There was an increase in productivity to a point approximately 40% above the starting level. But it was found that apparently none of the factors being tested had much relation to increase in productivity. This conclusion was reached because no matter which factors were held constant and which varied, production continued to rise until it reached a high plateau. This held true when improved method of payment was tried, when rest pauses of various lengths were introduced and when the length of the working day was shortened. Even after some of these favorable test factors, example rest pauses and shelter hours were removed and the test conditions were returned to the normal conditions of the plant, production continued far above the average rate. The investigators were forced to conclude that some other factor was working to maintain high productivity. The investigators noticed the development of a new social situation during the course of experiment. It was an informal group. The social activity between the girls in and especially outside the working hours began to develop considerably during the course of the experiment. The scope of conversation facilitated such development. The group that had begun as a more aggregate of individuals without any special tie except physical proximity had little by little been transformed into a team whose members had become conscious of the existence of common ends and had thereby developed the will to attain them by seconding and supplementing, when necessarily, the action of the others. The group functioned to attain certain group goals which were apparently strongly believed in by the girls. The girls felt that they had a favored position in the plant. This position they believed could be maintained only by continuing a high level of production. The function of this group therefore come to be maintenance of the productive level at all costs. To that purpose, girls were chided if they fell behind their quotas, and discipline at work was strictly maintained. The RATR brought out the importance of informal groups in productivity. It showed how the informal group situation would help to increase productivity. Now, we will see the significance of industrial sociology. Industrial sociology has acquired significance in progressive society where industrial revolution played great role, which was necessitated to cater the growing demands of ever increasing population. The significance of industrial sociology is necessitated considering the benefits discussed below. The first one, the use of scientific methods. Industrial sociology acquires great significance in view of scientific methods adopted to study. To understand it by establishing cause-effect relationships, scientific knowledge helps us. All-round progress of mankind depends upon moving up the ladder of MASLOW's hierarchy of needs, that is, food at the bottommost need. With the onset of industrial revolution, development of industries took the center stage. Industrial development in any nation became a key factor in deciding the progress of that nation. As science helped in industrial development, the systematic knowledge acquired using scientific methods, human behavior became very handy. Thus, industrial sociology as a subject of study gained currency. Various institutions dealing with industrial society, its social control, social dynamics, social change, problems and their remedies came up and thereby widened the scope of industrial sociology. It would not be exaggeration to say that without knowledge of industrial sociology, industrial progress could not have been achieved. The second one, understanding the social aspect of industry. The orderly movement of things based on certain rules takes any work to logical conclusion. That is the importance of science, and that is why it is called specialized knowledge. To gauge the development of any nation, the position of its industries plays a great role. The contribution of industries to the well-being of citizens of its country and humanity at large has become now predominant in the index of development of any nation. Industrial sociology has added new dimension to the knowledge of humanity. The workman who do work execute the design that is taken from drawing board to floor or vital link between industry and practice. So called labor class workmen are to be trained, taught and toughened so that they become finest craftsmen. The social strata, importance of roles and problems of workmen are to be addressed in such a way that there ever remains cordial industrial relations and industrial peace should bring development in industries. The third one, solutions from industrial society to the problems of industry. Based on knowledge and experience, people are employed in industries leading to formation of various layers taking care of different job roles and responsibilities. Industrial revolution gave birth to industries which were organized to achieve its objectives. Job roles, decided expertise, division of labor and degree of responsibility, and thus created vertical and horizontal setup in the organization. Occupation hazards are associated with industries which require matching counterbalance in the form of money, perks, glamour and other welfare measures. As workmen, supervisor, executives, policy makers are associated with any industry, a stratum is formed which gives feeling of differentiation, status consciousness, inferiority, superiority complex, etc. The fourth one, industrial relations. Industrial relations play a vital role in development of industries in any country. The management policies, its objective, long term and short term goals decide the working environment. In short, we can say the mission and vision of any company in theory and practice speak about the company. The relationship between workman and management has to be harmonious for industrial rest, and once that is there, industrial progress is bound to happen. Production has to multiply. The production coupled with quality is the need for growth of any industry. Industrial sociology helps in achievement of this objective. Important factors playing great roles in good industrial relations are rates of wages, working conditions, welfare measures, requirement policy, job security, etc. Welfare measures are widely covered under the heading of food, cloth and house. Industrial sociology is gaining importance due to its role played in taking care of all these discussed matters: mutual trust, sense of belonging, feeling of ownership, team spirit or knitting social industrial fabric, which ultimately result into higher quality production and give sustenance, and thus growth is achieved. Initial steps of ladder of hierarchy of needs of MASLOW, namely food, safety and security, are very important to be given topmost priority to make workmen like their duty seriously. Division of labor. Everyone cannot do everything. In India, caste system worked well earlier. In fact, people were easily adapting family profession. However, with good progress in education, people started coming out of family business. The sharpening of mind, learning skills of others' profession and zeal and zest make people go for the occupation which make them happy. Thus, caste system, which earlier caused impediment in economic progress, is losing its effect. Not by design, but by default. Industrial progress caused mingling, particularly in industrial society. Thus, caste system is being eliminated and division of labor is made based on certain other factors, namely innate ability, training, choice, etc. Now, scientific division of labor in industry demands good knowledge as per profession. Here, role of industrial sociology comes to play. Economic planning. After India gained freedom, the progress of nation was to be carried out on solid foundations, and thus it adopted 5-year plan growth approach. Called temples of modern India by first Prime Minister of India Jawaharlal Nehru, industrial growth was aimed in 5-year plan to solve many problems risen mainly out of population, illiteracy, low level of wages, corruption, lack of training, people and professional approach are some of the problems which require intervention of industrial sociologists. Industrial automation. Industrial revolution came with onset of mechanization. The increased requirements of people necessitated invention of steam engine to mechanize processes such as cloth weaving in England. More automation means less manual work and in turn less employment. It gave more profits to industrialists, and so more automation was opposed by workmen's unions. Here, role of industrial sociologists brings solution to the dispute. Industrial management. Industrial management requires scientific approach to take care of turnover, sustenance of activity, quality and other variable factors. Human approach is given in industrial management, where all elements of production are most efficiently employed without any exploitation. Integration of family. The unit of any society is family, which requires special attention. Any disturbance caused due to any social evil such as alcoholism, insufficient housing, bad recreation, uncontrolled media, print as well as electronic would disorganize industrial society. In particular, disintegration of family is bound to happen. Industrial sociology gives insight leading to solutions of many problems risen out of progress in industries. Summary. Industrial sociology concentrates on social organization of factory. This focus includes not only the interactions of people playing roles in these organizations, but also the ways in which their work roles are interrelated with other aspects of their life. The scientific methods adopted in Hawthrone by establishing cause-effect relationship, scientific knowledge gives insight leading to solutions of many problems risen out in industries. The role of informal relations was highlighted by the scientific studies carried by industrial sociologists. Knowledge of social relations helped to solve the problems of labor class, industrialization and resulted urbanization. Labor welfare and labor legislation requires an understanding of the condition of the industry and labor. The present day industrial society requires labor welfare, which presupposes scientific knowledge in this area.